Super talented, super interesting, incredibly polarizing. Lover or hater, Billie Eilish has made shockwaves in the music community. And I'm convinced that she, and also her brother Phineas, are musical geniuses. Let's talk about it. What's up guys, my name is Connor, and today we're going to break down the genius of Billie Eilish and her brother who helps write and produce all her content, Phineas. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the song Everything I Wanted and talking about why that song is a masterpiece and exactly what makes it work. So if you've been living under a rock for the last 5 years, Billie Eilish is an American singer-songwriter. She and her brother Phineas were born and raised in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Highland Park. They started writing and recording together when Billie was just 13 years old, and by the time she was 14, they put out a single called Ocean Eyes that ended up being a pretty big hit. Since then, it's been all uphill for Billie and Phineas. Not only has Billie just released song after song and album after album that have taken over the charts, but her brother Phineas has released some solo material as well that has done very well on its own right. In 2019, Billie put out an album called When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go?, featuring a song called Everything I Wanted. So today we're going to be breaking down that song and talking about the 5 things that make it an absolute masterpiece. So let's get into the good stuff. So the first thing that makes Everything I Wanted a work of brilliance is the lyrical content. Somehow Billie and Phineas were able to take lyrics that are super unrelatable and only actually apply to a very small portion of the population and make them incredibly relatable to the point that anybody can identify with them. So the song is about a few different things. It's a weird mishmash of concepts. Primarily it's about Billie's rise to fame and how that's affected her. Mostly she focuses on the drawbacks, the stressors, the things that have made her life more difficult. All while she's telling the story, she's splicing in themes from very specific dreams she's had. So already it doesn't get more unrelatable than that, right? Rise to fame, how many people can say they've experienced the rise to fame? And Billie's dreams. There is one person in the world who can identify with the specifics of that topic, and that person is Billie Eilish. In the chorus, the song kind of flips the script lyrically, and it focuses more on Billie's relationship with her brother Phineas, and how he's kind of been there as her guiding light and her rock, and her support system through all of the turbulence of her rise to fame. So those 3 themes all mixed together, kind of weird, offbeat, and also super specific to Billie's own life. However, the lyrics are constructed intentionally and vaguely enough that we as the audience can read into it in our own way. Instead of the pressure of a meteoric rise to fame, for example, the listener can interpret it as the pressure of being put in a position where you're responsible for other people, where all of a sudden you've got people looking up to you or depending on you for things. Much more broad, right? That's something much more universal. The song includes the lyrics, and it feels like yesterday was a year ago, but I don't want to let anybody know, because everybody wants something from me now, and I don't want to let them down. That stanza right there does not allude specifically to fame at all. Instead, it strips out the human essence of what's stressful about being put in that position of power. Which, if you've ever been in a position where you've had a kid, or had little siblings, or grown and progressed in your life to the point where other people are dependent on you for things, you know exactly how this feels. The strange passage of time when you're in that position, how you feel like you have to keep it all bottled up, and the onus is completely on you to solve everybody's problems. It's lonely, it's isolating, and it's masterfully portrayed in the lyrics of this song. Another example is the second stanza of the first verse. So the lyrics here are, thought I could fly, so I stepped off the golden. Nobody cried, nobody even noticed. I saw them standing right there, kinda thought they might care. Now Billie has said in an interview that this is taken specifically from a dream she's had, where she had a dream that she stepped off the Golden Gate Bridge and passed away, and in the afterlife saw her family and friends mourning her death. Except they weren't mourning her death. They were ignoring it. They just didn't care. They're talking about how, it's fine, we never really liked her anyways, life goes on. And she said she felt deeply, even in the dream, how much that hurt. So in the song itself, she ties that to her ascent to fame. But the core essence of that message is incredibly relatable. The thought of being gone and your life not having mattered, nobody caring, that's something that's universally terrifying. And then you get to the chorus where she starts talking about leaning on her brother for support. Now again, in this specific situation, where both you and your brother have created this musical monolith and suddenly it's you two against the world, and you're alone in fame's eye. That's something very specific to the two of them. But the idea of having somebody in your life who's providing that support system, who says, look, everything's gonna be okay, no matter what happens, I'm gonna be there for you. We're in this together. Not only is that super relatable, but you've got lyrics such as long as I'm here, no one can hurt you. If I could change the way that you see yourself, you wouldn't wonder why you hear they don't deserve you. Simple, elegant, and beautiful ways of portraying the message. Hey, look, you're struggling. Just know I'm always here for you. I want the best for you. And it is my hope that you find the inner strength that you need to push through what you need to push through. Once again, Billie and Phineas have taken something lyrically very specific to them, stripped it down and broadened it so that everybody can understand the core feelings and the core message behind that. All right, reason number 2 why Everything I Wanted is a masterpiece is its simplicity and repetition. Now this is a drum that I beat constantly. If you're subscribed to this channel, you're gonna get sick of hearing it from me, but whatever, it's my channel and I can talk about it if I want. Simplicity is so important as an element of a well-packaged, beautiful work of art. Even in really complex masterpieces, there's a simplicity and a structure that makes them work. If you do too much, you try to put too many things together that don't mesh well, you're gonna just get a chaotic jumbled mess. Now, Billie and Phineas specifically make a huge effort to focus on simplicity and minimalism in their work. This is something that Phineas has talked about at length. He has said, as a producer, it's his mission to not put any more detail into a song than the song needs. And this song is the perfect example. Yeah, there's a good bit of variety, but the variety is implemented very specifically and intentionally. And every time something changes or a new element is added or taken away, there's a specific reason for it. The percussion, for example, it's super straightforward. It's not a crazy complicated rhythm. The sounds are all pretty standard, but it's the perfect element that drives the song forward. And you don't consciously realize when it is and is not playing in the song at any given point, but the presence or absence of the percussion really fuels the energy of the song, and it helps guide the arc and push the song all the way through from start to finish. Then there's the pre-chorus. The pre-chorus is just a section of the verse repeated and stripped down before they go to the chorus. The repetition drives home the emphasis of the melody line and the lyrics, and then when they get to the pre-chorus, they remove a bunch of the instruments that they've added over the course of the verse. And all of a sudden, there's an intimacy to the section that wasn't there before. They give you a really personal moment before they get to the chorus, and immediately everything becomes big again. And then there's the chorus itself. For most of the chorus, the melody is pretty similar. That little theme, that motif repeats again and again. That repetition of the melody makes it feel very familiar, but every time they repeat it, they change the lyrics and continue to push the story along. Now, if it were just that motif again and again and nothing else for the entire chorus, it probably wouldn't work. Probably be boring and a little weird and overly repetitive. But the third line of the chorus, they change it. The way that you see yourself. And that movement where they take you up a little bit more before bringing it back down and they extend the length of the line, it provides just enough variety to keep you engaged and keep you hooked before they go to the fourth line, which is just that original motif once again. As another example, you see this in the bridge as well. The first time through the bridge, it's really stripped down, there's not much going on, there's this little synth that we'll talk about in a bit that kind of drives the part, but not too much else happening. And then the second time through the bridge, a lot more instruments added, the space is really filled out, there's a lushness and an energy that wasn't there the first time. They layer in some additional vocal harmonies, increase the percussion, increase the instrumentation. Same idea, repeated, but you get a lot more the second time, and it makes it much more impactful. All right, so reason number 3 why this song is a masterpiece is actually related to reason number 2, and it is the super subtle and elegant flow and change of energy over time. Now, this is something that as a producer, Phineas is just the master of. It's crazy how good he is at this. But he knows exactly when to have a very gradual and slow increase and decrease of energy, and when to do something more abrupt and more consciously noticeable. So we start at the beginning of the song, and all there is this pulsing piano, the vocals, and a very light, subtle synth in the background that just adds some what we call ear candy. Adds a little bit of variety, super nuanced, almost not even noticeable, but it impacts how the song feels. For 30 straight seconds, which in 2019, when this was released, is an eternity, that's all you get. And then they add just enough to stave off the boredom and to keep the song interesting and to keep you wondering what's gonna happen next. After those 30 seconds, you get to verse 2, a kick drum comes in. Just 4 to the floor. Not a super interesting pattern, but it's enough of a change from what we had before that it works, and suddenly you feel like you're in a different place. Shortly after that, more percussion comes in. And I've already mentioned how the percussion, whether or not you consciously notice it, it drives the song forward. After that, you start to get a little bit more of that nuanced background synth. Then you start to get some vocal harmonies, just very subtly layered in. After that, you get a synth pad, which is like artificial strings. It just makes it feel a little more lush and adds to the chord structure. Before you know it, you get to the end of the verse, and you already have this diverse tapestry of sounds and feelings and emotions. We made it all the way here from just a single pulsing piano at the very beginning of the song without it ever feeling like it was abrupt or jarring or like Phineas is beating you over the head with his production decisions. And you get to the pre-chorus, most of those new elements that have been layered in throughout the verses taken out. And like I mentioned earlier, it gives it this very specific intimacy because now you have this absence of the sounds and the energy that you'd been used to. Then you get to the chorus, and instead of the gradual increase in energy that's been happening the entire time, they bring everything back in. Huge vocal harmonies, drums to drive the beat, lush synths in the background. It's all there, and because of how stripped down and intimate the pre-chorus is, the chorus feels like this huge moment. Then you get to the second verse. verse. And does Phineas go right back to the same instrumentation from the first verse? Absolutely not. Instead, he puts this weird kind of bubble synth. It's hard to even really describe what the sound is, but it's very unique. And you wouldn't think that it would work in a song like this, but he layers it with some of the elements from the first verse so that they blend together really nicely, but create enough novelty that you're still engaged. And you're not thinking, oh, the second verse is just a rehashing of the first verse. That weird, like, arpeggiated bubble synth comes back again and again in various forms throughout the rest of the song. Now, it's constructed and it's mixed different ways, but that specific vibe is still there, and it feels familiar, but with enough variation and diversity to keep you listening to it. And then here's something interesting. At the very end of the song, after the bridge, usually you would go to another chorus, or do something else, have another familiar moment before you go to the outro. But in this song, Billie and Phineas made the executive decision, no, we're not gonna revisit that chorus again. It's tired, it's played, we've done our part. Instead, we're gonna go right to an instrumental outro and just let the plane gently land without any more vocals. It's a bold decision. Usually people want the hook one more time, but in this case, I think it really pays off. I think they were very tactful about the way that they realized that the chorus is interesting and it's kind of fun and it can be produced in an interesting way, but the hook is just not dynamic or intense enough to stand on its own for one more playthrough. So they were like, yeah, we don't need it. We'll just leave it out. We'll end the song and it'll be good. All right, reason number 4 why the song is a masterpiece is the chord progression. Now, at face value, the chord progression isn't anything too crazy. To use some musician lingo, it's 4, 5, 3, 6. These are standard what we call diatonic chords. If this doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry about it. Not super important. The point is these are chords that are commonly used in music. But there's a couple interesting things that happen to set the chord progression of this song apart from a normal pop song that you'd hear on the radio. Number 1 is the use of 7 chords. So if I were just doing the chord progression by itself, it might sound something like this. So the first thing that happens in this song is that Phineas mixes in slightly more interesting versions of those chords. So for the first, the third, and the fourth chord, which means 3 of the 4 total chords in the progression, Phineas turns these into 7 chords, which now makes the progression sound like this. Again, it's slightly more interesting, and it's gonna stand out a little more because in the normal type of pop music, at least that Billie was doing at this time, 7 chords were a little bit unusual. Nothing too off the beaten path, but usually in that lane, people just tend to stick to more basic major and minor triads. Again, complete music jargon. If you've checked out at this point, I get it. Now, the really interesting thing here, and the thing that I want to highlight, is what happens in the chorus. So I've already talked about how most of the chorus melody is the same, except for the third line, where Billie's vocals go up higher and they extend the line a little bit longer. Now, to highlight this, at the exact same time she's doing that, the third chord in the progression goes from being a minor chord, which is totally normal, to being what we call a dominant chord. Not a super crazy or mind-blowing change, but it is the perfect thing to highlight that increase in energy at that moment of the chorus. If I could change the way that you see yourself. You hear that on the way. It's different than what came before, and even though it's a tiny change, it's one that really matters at that moment in the chorus. It creates this kind of discomfort and different kind of movement that we don't have really anywhere else in the song. And of course, it's a testament to Phineas's production skills and Billie's arrangement skill that they can keep basically the same chord progression the entire time, but still make it feel interesting and compelling and novel in every section. All right, reason number 5 why Everything I Wanted is a masterpiece is the production itself. So this is something I've touched on a little bit in other parts of this video, but songwriting and music production go hand in hand. How a song is presented has a lot to do with how the song is constructed. I've heard many a great song just ruined by substandard or lackluster production. And I've also heard many a song that I probably wouldn't have blinked an eye at had I just heard it on an acoustic guitar that's really brought to life because of the amazing skills of the producer. With Billie and Phineas, you get both. They're both great songwriters. Billie has a very keen ear and attention to detail. And Phineas, you know, at the time he was still very young. I think he was maybe like 21 when they put the song out, but he spent his entire childhood refining the music production skill set that he used on this album. So just to list off a few production choices that Phineas makes that really help the song. Obviously, we've already talked about the bubble synth. I don't know how they would feel about me calling it the bubble synth, but that's what it invokes for me. It's a really interesting sound. It feels very digital, but also kind of organic, and it blends with the live instrumentation and the more natural instrumentation of the song in a really interesting way. I've also mentioned the pulsing piano. Instead of it going bum, 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 it goes bum, bum, bum. And the volume kind of fluctuates over time. This is something called sidechaining. Now, the specific way that Phineas uses this technique is really more reserved for EDM music typically. What it does is it cuts the volume every single beat and then brings the volume back in between the beats. That way, if you've got a kick drum going, the kick drum and the instrumentation aren't happening at the same time. It alters it. So for Phineas to decide, okay, this is what this sort of acoustic stripped down indie pop song needs, is a brilliant decision. It could easily have not worked. You know, this is something that Kygo or Illenium might do in a huge, soaring, glitzy EDM bank. But Phineas is like, nah, we're gonna try this. And not only did he pull it off, but that sidechain piano is one of the iconic parts of this song. It's one of the pieces of the production that make the song what it is and make it so recognizable. The next little detail is, it's a pretty obvious one, but it's kind of funny. If you know the song, you'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But the second verse, when Billie sings "My Head Is Underwater," it sounds like her vocals in the production is going underwater at that moment. This is something called a low pass filter. Essentially what's happening here is all of the high frequencies of the sound are being cut, so that only the low sounds are lit. It's kind of what being underwater does. High sound waves don't travel as well in a viscous medium like water, so all you're left with is the really low frequencies. So while Billie is singing about her head going underwater, Phineas alters the production to make it feel like you're actually being pulled underwater at that moment. It's kind of a fun detail. It's a little more in your face than a lot of the other production decisions he makes, but it's a lot of fun, and again, it's one of the iconic pieces of the song that make it so recognizable. So there you go. There's my take on Everything I Wanted. What do you think? Did I convince you? Is this song a masterpiece? This one was a lot of fun to do. I really love this song, and it was super cool to be able to break it down in such a level of detail and talk to you guys about it. I'm a huge fan of Billie and Phineas, so hopefully I'll be able to do more videos kind of breaking down what they do and why it's so masterful and different. But for now, there you go. That's what we got. If you liked the video or you found this interesting, please feel free to stick around. There is a big red subscribe button down there somewhere. If you click that, it would mean a lot to me. I put a lot of time and effort into these videos, and when you do that, it just really helps the algorithm. It's free, it takes about 2 seconds, and it goes a long way. Otherwise, thanks again for sticking around for this whole video. I appreciate you guys, and that's all we got. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.